Well, hello again. Can you all hear me? I hope you've enjoyed your meal, and now you're going to have a good program. I do have to go back off script for just a moment because I made a huge mistake a few moments ago, and I need to beg forgiveness of our longest-term sponsor. The founding sponsor of the Churchill Club, Silicon Valley Bank, has been with us for 22 years. Is that okay? Okay. Tonight's program is being broadcast live via Ustream at ustream.tv and also via Slingbox to a group of students at the University of Rochester in New York. Thank you to Ustream and Slingbox, of course, and a big hello to all of our viewers. We're very glad you could join us tonight. This is exciting to be on the web and on Slingbox. Our student friends at the University of Rochester have been using the Churchill Club materials in their classrooms and are very familiar with us. So much so, in fact, that in honor of our 10th anniversary of the Top 10 Tech Trends, they took the trouble to prepare a short video inspired by our trends. I think we should pause to take a look at this video. Would you roll, please?
Co-teach a course with Tom Smith at University of Rochester entitled Social Network Theory and Entrepreneurial Activity in the Silicon Valley. For the past 3 years, we've been incorporating audio and video material from the Churchill Club sessions. The real-world perspective of the Churchill Club and the insights provided by its acclaimed panelists directly connect students to life in Silicon Valley and afford them with an unparalleled entrepreneurial education. Thanks again for the opportunity to present tonight. We put together a short film which we hope you enjoy. Thanks again.
Lunch tracker. We're definitely doing lunch tracker because I used to hate when my lunch got stolen.
All right, guys, ideas.
I used to hate when my lunch got stolen. Oh, we need lunch tracking technology. It won't work.
Oh, LPS, lunch positioning system.
That's definitely VC fundable.
Daria. What else? Daria. Hey.
What?
Yeah. Cubal Express.
It's going to be called kibex.com. I'm the CEO.
Okay, I got it. Alright guys, it's only going to cost us 2 times the amount of the food to ship it. Awesome!
Good.
That's a business model. Did you guys ever used to eat that candy when you were a kid that turned your teeth blue?
I loved it.
Is there any way that we can incorporate that into some type of technology?
Blue teeth?
Blue teeth.
Oh my gosh, like
Blue.
Bluetooth but blue teeth.
It's plural.
How about like a phone that's like implanted into your teeth?
Yes, and we could power it with micro fuel cells.
Exactly, in the teeth.
With tongue dialing.
Yeah.
Tongue dialing. I
Yeah.
like that.
May or may not
It has a nice ring. It's like a phone.
Hey, how you doing?
That's what she said. You can't do that one. You can't.
So I saw my 4-year-old nephew the other day. Had a great idea. Millibots. Little tiny robots that can do stuff.
Yeah, that's probably possible.
You know, like attack people.
Like military though? So they're soldiers?
Oh, of course.
So we're talking about creating an entire force that can fit inside a contact box.
Well, if it's going to be all about nanotechnology, I think we should call them nanobots.
Can we attack something?
I can see it
Anything.
now.
Really, anything.
Thousands of nanobots burning down the Eiffel Tower.
Well, I think we should market it to the military, and then they can attack whoever they want with these nanobots.
Like that country called Europe.
So what happened to our office?
What office?
We don't have any money.
What's that smell? We've been wearing the same clothes for the past 5 years.
Yeah, what do you expect?
So that explains it.
Yeah, we're on to new things.
Okay. Digital defense. This is our venture. Let's keep it.
Can we make
Defense,
a,
like military defense?
Yeah.
Like
Like
defense
Homeland
against
Security?
terrorists.
Or digital defense, like in basketball. Have you seen the
Like
Homeland
so.
Security colors these days?
Oh my gosh, this morning.
Orange and red,
Red.
always.
Red, scary.
Always orange and red.
It's probably important for the people know immediately when it changes, so that would be a good
can we make some type of chip that has the Homeland Security
Yeah, like a defense, like protector, deflector chip.
A deflector chip.
Yeah.
Does
To
it have a force
deflect them
field?
from, mind control.
This is all about America using our deflector chips to prevent digital radio terrorism.
You ever play that game Operation?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I've always wanted to do surgery on myself at home.
We can totally. Okay. I just had a brilliant idea. We can have a website with instructions on how to perform home surgeries.
Brilliant.
It'll save people hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Homesurgery.com.
Yep. It turns out there's this disease where, like, it really cramps up your hand and inhibits you from text messaging.
In the medical community, they're calling it SMS syndrome. It's actually genetic. It's odd. We should capitalize on this.
You should, absolutely.
Well, everyone needs to be able to text message.
Stem cells.
We could use stem cells. I like that.
Oh my
I like
gosh.
that. We have to cut to next week. This is the closest we've been in 7 years. We just need a name. Microsoft?
No.
Twitter?
No.
Ja.
Absolutely not.
These are all ridiculous, terrible names.
What about Blogger?
No, we just need a name. So everything's trying to be environmentally friendly, and green technology is totally where it's at, except everything's going wireless. But the power cord remains. So I think we should have green power cords and call it Green Power.
It's probably the stupidest idea I've ever heard.
Shut up! I have an MBA.
How are we gonna help the farmers with mad cows?
Wait, do the farmers have mad cows? Or like
The cows.
The cows are mad cows.
The mad cows have cows.
Yeah.
They're angry or they?
No, the brain disease.
Oh.
Like, I think,
Okay.
hold on, I'm getting something here. I think we could really, really help them out if we created synthetic brains, synthetic cow brains.
The farmers? What about?
Yeah.
Okay, so synthetic brains.
No.
Why do we get the farmers synthetic cow brains?
Well, they can replace, or I guess we could do it for them, but the cows that have mad cow disease, we can replace their brains with a synthetic one.
What about tracking the cows?
We can network them.
Write that down.
Talk to each other. Through a social networking website.
This is Face Cow. Face Cow.
I like it.
It's way too complicated.
The only thing we have to make them do is chew grass. I really don't see the problem. And then
True.
we'll have a lifetime supply of cheese. Cheddar? Cheese.
Gruyere?
That sounds way too French. What's wrong with the French?
All right, guys, it's 2008. How are we going to get funding?
I don't know, was there anything in The Art of the Start about luring venture capitalists with free cheese? No, but we already violated the 10-20-30 rule.
Wow, that was good. What a walk down memory lane. For some of our prognosticators, maybe you weren't so accurate along the way. But for the people, the students at University of Rochester, I know we are definitely looking forward to seeing you young trendsetters here in Silicon Valley after graduation. So we would welcome you guys. One last announcement before we actually commence tonight. All viewers, as well as you here in the audience, have an opportunity to vote for the trends presented by our speakers tonight by phone, courtesy of Broadcaster Media. So please dial 650-224-0053 and simply text either yes or no after each presentation of each trend. Again, that's 650-224-0053. The phone number and instructions can also be found on the inside front cover of our program tonight, and so you can do it from the audience. At the close of our program tonight, the results will be sent to you on your cell phone. Is this 21st century or what? This is great. So now we will commence the broadcast for the main event. Here we go. The Churchill Club is delighted to present our 10th annual Top 10 Tech Trends debate. Our lead sponsor tonight is Triple Point Capital. Our supporting sponsors are Accenture, A&R Edelman, Ernst & Young, Fenwick & West, and Silicon Valley Bank. I would now like to introduce you to our illustrious panel of prognosticators. I got a couple of tough words here. This is interesting. Seated on my far left and on your far right, no? Seated right here. Your far left, my immediate left, is Steve Jurvetson, who is one of our returning veterans. Steve is the managing director of Draper Fisher Jurvetson, with founding investments including Hotmail and Kana. Prior to Draper, Steve worked in a variety of industry roles, including as a chip designer, a business strategy consultant for medtech and IT companies, a programmer, a product marketer, and all of that was before he was 20 years old. Among Steve's other many achievements, he graduated #1 in his class at the Henry Ford Scholar, as a Henry Ford Scholar at Stanford. Steve, thank you for being here. Next to Steve, we would like to welcome Vinod Khosla as a pundit, and he's new to our panel tonight. Vinod, thank you for being here. While an affiliate partner with Kleiner Perkins, Caulfield & Byers, Vinod has also established Khosla Ventures, which focuses on alternative fuels, affordable housing, microfinancing, and other technologies. He was the co-founder of Daisy Systems, and I'm old enough to remember that, Vinod, so I don't know how many people here remember Daisy. That's great. And the founding CEO of Sun Microsystems, where he pioneered open systems and commercial risk processors. Vinod serves on numerous boards and holds degrees in electrical engineering, biomedical, and business. And we look forward to your contribution tonight, Vinod. Thank you for being here. Next, we would like to welcome Josh Kopelman, managing partner of First Round Capital, a seed stage venture fund. Josh has been an active entrepreneur and investor to the internet industry since its commercialization, and in fact is an inventor on 5 U.S. patents for his work in internet technology. Did you invent that, or are you going to leave that with Al Gore? Al Gore, okay. He founded or co-founded a number of companies that either went public or were acquired, including Infonautics, Half.com, and Turntide. In 2000, he was awarded Ernst & Young's prestigious Entrepreneur of the Year Award, and he graduated with a BS degree cum laude from the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania. Welcome, Josh. Was that, did you say Magnum cum laude, did I hear? Were you Magnum cum laude or just cum laude?
No, I said I didn't graduate in 2000.
Oh, you didn't graduate? Another returning veteran tonight is Roger McNamee. Roger, thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
Roger is co-founder and managing director of Elevation Partners, where he joined with, among others, U2's Bono, to launch the first private equity firm targeting media and entertainment content and consumer technology. He is also a co-founder and general partner of Integral Capital Partners and Silver Lake Partners, and authored the book, The New Normal, published in 2004. Roger is a trustee of Bryn Mawr College and an overseer of the Amos Tuck School of Business Administration at Dartmouth. He also plays guitar and bass in his spare time in the band Moonalice.
Alice.
Moonalice. Okay, welcome.
Moonlight.
I'm trying to learn to be hip, Roger. I'm going to get it right. Moonalice. Got it. Okay. Lastly, we're happy to welcome Joe Schoendorf, of Accel Partners back to the top 10 tech trends. At Accel, Joe assists their portfolio management in establishing strategic global relationships in the U.S., Europe, and Asia. Joe came to Silicon Valley in 1966, and during his career prior to Accel, held positions at companies including Apple and HP. He also currently serves as a member of the World Economics Forum, and he has recently been elected to the Foundation Board of Directors in Geneva, and also serves on its U.S. board. So we welcome Joe back. Thank you, Joe. And of course, we are so thankful to this evening's moderator, Tony Perkins, for coming back yet a 10th time to serve as our moderator and take the endless abuse that's going to be dished out tonight. Or are you dishing it out, Tony? He's dishing tonight, okay. Tony is creator and editor-in-chief of AlwaysOn and the founder and former editor-in-chief of Red Herring Communication. He is also, of course, co-founder of the Churchill Club, and we're glad to have him leading tonight's program once again. So please join me in welcoming our panelists, Steve Jurvetson, Vinod Khosla, Josh Kopelman, Roger McNamee, Joe Schoendorf, and our moderator, Tony Perkins.
So I wanted to reiterate something real quick. Silicon Valley Bank, when I really co-founded the club, I was at Silicon Valley Bank, and not only were they the first sponsor, but the first phone number for the Churchill Club was Silicon Valley Bank, and I didn't even ask permission for that. And when we were getting more calls at the bank for the Churchill Club than Silicon Valley Bank, we came up with this, our president, who was very entrepreneurial, Roger Smith, came up with a plan. He said, oh, you can join the Churchill Club if you open a deposit. So then quickly, the phone number got changed. But anyway, I want to welcome you guys. Joe, you're out there on the far right where you belong. I think the only, if they had a chair for me, I'd be the only guy that would sit farther to the right than you. So I'm glad that you're anchoring the team here. Roger obviously basically says he's not going to get a haircut until he is not invited to the Churchill Club.
Exactly.
So he also wears 6 phones around his belt, so he has more armor than a medieval knight.
All of them from Palm.
And then this year you bought a phone company, or Palm, so good for you. You're investing in yourself. Josh, Josh, this is your first time, so put on your seatbelt. Vinod actually is one of my heroes. If I were to start Silicon Valley over again and I had my top 5 basketball team, Vinod would be one of my top 5 guys. In fact, Vinod, I think in like the first year of the club, I got you to speak at the club, right? So he was one of our first speakers after he had founded Sun Microsystems when he was 27 years old, a little underachiever. And then finally, Steve. And the only thing that I made a deal with Steve that he had to talk at a pace that we could understand because he's so smart that he talks very fast. So I do want to mention, John Doerr of Kleiner Perkins is not back. And, people are probably wondering about that. But at this top 10 trends, we have this thing where 3 strikes and you're out. Right? Right, guys? So a couple of years ago, what were those strikes? A couple of years ago, I think it was John who said that the bird flu was going to kill all of us. So last year, he predicted that there would be the emergence of this independent broadband Wi-Fi network with national-wide frequency or whatever, and that obviously never happened. And then, what was the third one, Joe?
He endorsed Hillary.
Okay.
I told you we'd find out the sentiment of the crowd if we use that.
Yes, sir. Okay. Sounds like they're on our team. All right. Good. Okay, so I think I'm supposed to, at this point, read the first. Number 1 is Steve's. And it's basically demographics are destiny, creating opportunity. Every 11 seconds, a baby boomer turns 60. This internet-savvy cohort represents an enormous market of time and money, driving new opportunities in mental exercise, online education, and eventually an eBay for information that exceeds the market for physical goods. So all I have to say is we'll have to exercise some mental exercise to understand what this trend is. So will you care to explain what you mean here?
Sure. Thanks, Tony.
Yes, sir.
But I don't promise to speak slowly. I can't help myself. This is a pretty exciting one. It's obviously a market trend, and later we'll get to some geeky stuff. But this is more a US, Canadian, UK, developed world market trend. So obviously I'm only speaking about part of the world in talking about baby boomers. But what's exciting about this group is that they're qualitatively different. This generation is qualitatively different from their predecessors. It'll be the first internet-savvy cohort of seniors. And it is an enormous market, right? It's hard to fathom how enormous this can be. To put some numbers behind this, they're about twice as internet active as the prior generation. They're, excuse me, 3 times as active, and twice as likely to have a college degree. So imagine a smart, active group not wanting to retire, entering those ages when AARP knocks on your door with a different sentiment about what the future holds. And they are basically driving the economy today. There are about 75 million of them, over half the workforce in America. And if you look forward just about 18 years to 2025, you can think of America, the entire country, looking like Florida does today. So there are a lot of statistics you hear about demographics.
Blue hair, everybody's going to have blue hair?
Yeah, well, I mean, and everything that goes with it. That is a certainty, right? I mean, there's nothing that's going to change that. So that's not really a forecast, not something to vote on, because demographics being destiny is not something that's likely to change, barring bird flu or something dramatic like that. So given that, though, what's interesting about it? What makes it special? Some, like Mary Furlong in the back, have estimated that this market for healthy aging is $500 billion in size. And this includes all kinds of interesting opportunities that you might not expect, like the fact that, according to her estimates, over half of all businesses and franchises today are started by people in this cohort, entering a sort of a second phase of their life. So they're a very active group, and getting to this bold prediction that one day they may usher us into an eBay for information kind of era, let me share maybe some of the thinking behind that, because that's just one of many opportunities that the boomers provide. If they're at home, educated, they're internet savvy, what might they do, right? Some of the greatest pearls of wisdom that have been accumulated across a variety of service industries are in their minds. They have a connection now like they never had before, and they're not looking to retire. There are a lot of technologies coming along that allow you to partition workflows, to farm out work, to outsource, if you will, freely and more granularly than ever before. Think of everything from simple stuff like web services and legal services and advice on this, that, or the other thing. The services economy is the majority of the developed world economy, and it will increasingly become so. And services aren't easily traded as today, and they should be. So I think one day the services economy online will exceed that of physical goods if you think of marketplaces like eBay. And I think boomers might be a beneficiary. So clearly others will as well, and this will be a globalization trend, not just a US trend. But it's an opportunity for those boomers to really tap into the economy. Because there's a wonderful asymmetry between those who have money and those who have time and those who are seeking answers and those who don't have the answers that they're looking for. And you can imagine boomers working flex time from home on a variety of work that's partitioned out to them. So this, I think, creates investment opportunities in education and retraining, investment opportunities in telecommunicating technologies, and doing all this over the internet and over video. And sort of a kicker to make this maybe feel different than our parents' generation, the way we might remember the last generation of folks going through this, with a mental acuity that we haven't seen before. And this gets to the mental exercise point that I think is very important. And it probably relates to everyone in the room as sort of a take-home thought, is that if you're 35 or older, your rate of cognitive decline right now is the same as a healthy 80-year-old. It's the same slope. Just when you're older, you've accumulated more and you forget most of what you try to remember. It's sort of an important threshold. But your pace of decline is the same. But that's just the average, right? You can dramatically affect that outcome. If no one exercised, we'd see a very unhealthy population physically. If no one does mental exercise, you see a very unhealthy population mentally. As our medical systems get better and better and extend our lives, we're not doing anything to exercise the brain. So I think we'll look back 5, 10 years from now and be amazed that the concept of mental exercise wasn't on our radar screen just 10, 20 years ago. And as one data point of what it can do, there's a company called Posit Science up in San Francisco that's done a bunch of tests with UCSF and Mayo Clinic. And they've shown that just with 40 hours of trust and trained exercises, you can take 10 years off that pace of decline. So now imagine these boomers in their 60s with the mental acuity of someone. We don't know how far this can go, right? The research is just beginning. Someone with the mental acuity of a 50, 40, 30-year-old now, but with all the cumulative wisdom of a 60-year-old. And now with an internet globally connected economy to tap into. It could be a brave new world unlike we've ever seen. So in short, I think lifelong learning is more than just enlightenment, it's an economic imperative.
Great, and think, Steve, while you're giving that presentation, 32 people turned 60. All righty. See, Josh, this is how it works. All right. So now it's time to vote. So our illustrious panel will vote first, and then they will prejudice you, and then you will vote after them. So green, half?
Nice.
Half? Oh, okay. So we got to go for Vinod. So why red?
Well, it's clearly an important demographic trend. I absolutely agree with it. Whether it's an opportunity for capitalization, which was the instructions, I doubt that it falls in the top 10.
Okay. Steve?
So I would completely agree. Green on the demographic trend,
right.
Red on the opportunity.
Opportunity. Other thoughts?
So yeah, I would just say that the economic opportunity is, in my mind, is unlikely to be in the specific training things nearly as much as in the consequences of the training. My understanding of Steve's view, and you should elaborate, Steve, but my sense is that your view is that by making all these people productive, you create another kind of economy that exists behind the one we have now, that is tapping the knowledge and experience of older people who can still be in the system, leveraging all the technology that can connect them to the outside world.
Exactly.
With that in place, I actually believe there is a capitalization opportunity. Whether it turns out to be in the top 10 or not, I don't know, but to me it seems like a very clear investment opportunity if you can, obviously package it properly. Am I saying that properly?
Yeah, absolutely right. And if I were to generalize, I think that's one of the interesting tech-centric trends, because this is obviously more than a tech trend. So I think as it's just an investment thesis, it's one of the biggest investment theses you could find. The tech subsector is what I was trying to focus on.
Okay, I think we got to hear from the only guy up here over 60. Joe?
I lost a dear friend this year who died at 96. And he was a Fortune 500 CEO who retired when he was 65, 31 years ago. And a few weeks before he died, and this was a very close friend, we'd have dinner with him in Big Sur almost every time we'd go down there. He said to me, nobody told me that when I retired at 65, I was going to live about as long as I had worked. And I look at what our demographic and what our probability actuarially is, and there go we. So we are all probably sitting here looking about what happens after 60, being about as long as it took us to get there from when we graduated from school. And that is going to create a set of opportunities that I don't think anybody can imagine. I mean, the ad on TV kind of says it all. This is the generation that, good or bad, we invented the information age, or we were here while it happened. One of the two things is true. And I don't think we're going to go quietly. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens. So I'm rooting for you.
All right, now from our audience, green or red?
A lot of green. Good.
All righty. Looks about, what, 60, 70% green?
More.
70, 80, I'd say.
70, 80? All right, thank you. Good.
Okay, well, all the red people report to Vinod's office for breakfast tomorrow morning.
You have a future, Steve. Okay, now to Vinod's first prediction. The device that used to be a phone. A mobile phone will turn into a mainstream computer. Beyond email, built-in projection screen, and high-speed data will make it your virtual credit card, ID, access to new types of presents, payment system, personal information filing system, and much, much more. Vinod.
Well, I think it's self-explanatory, so I don't have to say much. It always frustrates me that my wife doesn't know whether I'm in the middle of a meeting, in the middle of an important meeting, or doing something else and available to take a phone call and my phone rings. I think presence is just one simple example beyond email. But imagine this device, which in the next 2 years will have a projection screen built in so you can actually read the stuff instead of looking at this little squinty screen that nobody over the age of 30 can really look at. You get a full projection screen, you get full data access. Because you have a non-clonable ID built into your SIM card, you now can be authenticated that your phone is the right device and with your fingerprint that, in fact, you're the one using it. Why do you need 4 credit cards in your wallet? Every time you lose your wallet, you have to call 4 different places. It'll be in your SIM card and it'll be transferred to your new phone automatically. So projection screens, wallets, ID cards, passports, driver's licenses, one could just go on and on. Any information you need. I now actually keep electronically pictures of my passport, which I pull up every time I forget my passport, which happens given I'm over 50. Joe, I'm joining you. So this device that used to be your phone is going to be the most important thing. In fact, it's unlikely you'll carry your laptop with you. You know, you had a desktop, then we went to the laptop, but how about the image of your PC sitting on your phone, which has a 30 or 60 or 100 gig SIM card? Then you just come near a computer, and your computer, the physical hardware you have sitting there, becomes your personal computer, including that half-sent email message that you left at home. And oh, by the way, if you lose your phone, it's all in the network, and you get a new phone instantaneously at the local store. So this is a much more important trend than any one simple thing. That's really all I got to say. I mean, you literally have to imagine what you want to do, and it should be there on you, available anytime.
What's the time horizon?
I was just going to ask that.
Projectors in cell phones, I think, should be available in the next 2 years. Most people forget that 10 years ago, people thought it was ridiculous to have a camera in a cell phone. They are expecting in the next 2 years to have more than one camera per cell phone. One if you're looking at yourself, and one the other way. So the ratio is approaching 100 and is expected to cross 100. So screens will be there in the next 2 years. This is a high priority thing for TI, a projection screen off your cell phone with LEDs or lasers. The clonable ID, non-clonable ID is relatively simple, and high-speed wireless networks, the other critical ingredient, are in the next 2 to 3 years. And so that's all the ingredients to open up creativity.
So before we vote, my only concern is, what if you drop your phone in the toilet?
Well, if you do, you just walk over to the nearest store, and you get a new ID on a new phone with your fingerprint authentication on the new device.
And what does the thing project onto? The projection thing,
A wall, a notebook, a piece of paper.
Okay.
I say that because Steve has a little story.
Oh, I don't have a story. I just have a photo of his phone in the toilet, so it's very relevant. Just search for Vinod Khosla phone toilet.
Yeah, Google will find it for you.
Yes. So,
and I did need a new phone. I was traveling the next day, and I wish it was a network-available phone and my PC on that phone, too.
Yeah, so...
Which a company, there's plenty of companies doing that.
Yeah, so the toilet does pose a threat to this trend. Okay, so let's vote now. Ooh. All right, Josh,
So I
just take on the legend.
There's no way to...
He's good.
I agree with a lot of what you said. I think that the areas where I disagree are both on the time horizon and on the projection screen. I think that you have projection keyboards available now that that very few people are using. You have projection monitors available in some form now that very few people are using. So I guess I question the projection component, and I question the time frame. The high-level theory of a phone, of moving from a PC to a laptop to a phone, I would say I do agree with.
Tony, if I can
go get 'em.
Make a statement. We were talking before this event in the speaker room, and I said, it's nice to be in areas where nobody else believes the same is true. So Josh and I had this conversation. I said, I love being in areas where nobody else believes things are going to happen. So whether it's device that used to be a phone or making cement, which we are investing in, it's great to have no competition, and you just have to now be right.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yo,
so maybe
Steve.
it's maybe rude to follow because I voted no for the opposite reason, because these are supposed to be trends about the future, and the unfortunate thing is that trend is all played out except the projection screen, which I disagree with already, but just not in the U.S. Right? So I look back in Forbes 2004, and every one of the items on that list has occurred in a little country called Estonia. Right? Over half the people do all their passports, driver's license, pay the government. You vote for president with a cell phone. All those and more have already happened, so it just hasn't percolated to the U.S. You look at Korea and other places, they're much farther ahead. In the U.S., companies like Vivotech and others with contactless payment are making progress, right? They're already 8% of credit card payments in New York taxi cabs are the cell phone. Just tap and you're done. But these are supposed to be trends. So I'm being brutal, but I don't see that as a forecast as much as an observation of what's already happened.
So, Roger, I have to ask, do one of the 6 phones that you carry on...
So we have 2 people on opposite ends.
Yeah, yes. Never happened, it's already happened.
One happened, the other...
It's already happened.
So, Roger, I have to ask, do one of the 6 phones that you have on your belt do what Vinod... Okay, no. So there's a few...
No.
And why are you voting no?
And so, to be clear, my objection to it is mostly where Steve is, which is that the Asia is where most of that functionality is deeply inbred, and there are structural industry reasons from the carrier side that are preventing all of the things related to ID, and or put it this way, the carriers and the government and all that, and just the general lethargy, I think, puts that in the U.S., at least in North America, outside a 5-year window. Projection, I don't know, but I got to be honest with you, Vinod. The thing about the projection that concerns me is that in Asia, where everything else is true, many people do not have a lot of space, and so you wonder about that. I worry a lot about the privacy things, about the stuff you're talking about, and on the projection thing. But I am a huge believer in the substitution. I think part of the reason we're becoming a third world country is because we've allowed our telecom infrastructure, as well as all the rest of our infrastructure, to get governed by forces that are harvesting rather than investing. And we'd obviously be way better off in this country if we just mandated that 3 years, Vinod's thing had to come true. That would be huge. But I would say, from where I sit, it doesn't look to me like that is a likely outcome. But I really want his thing to be successful because it would make life way more interesting.
Uncle Joe?
I voted for him for a couple of reasons. Having known him for a long time, I know there's a lot of ways to lose money in this valley. One of the easy ways to lose money is to bet against Vinod. He doesn't remember this, but he called me up when he was starting this little company called Sun, and he explained it to me on the telephone, and I remember I agreed to go down and meet with Scott and Bill Joy, and I was at HP, proprietary, our own chip, our own proprietary operating system. And I remember I said to Bill, I said, now you mean you're going to take Unix from Berkeley, and you're going to take a chip from Motorola, and you're going to build a what? So I've learned to listen when Vinod says something might change. And it's just history I'm betting on. So that's my gut.
Yes, sir. Okay, Josh.
Audience?
I'm sorry?
Do we want the audience on Vinod?
Oh, I forgot. Yeah, audience. That'll be interesting. Green or red?
Half, 40, 50, 50, 40, 50.
Steve,
50.
you can see better.
50-50.
50.
Okay, Josh is first. The rise of the implicit internet. Historically, the web delivered most of its value by satisfying explicit user actions. A user entered a search query on Google. A user entered a review on Yelp. A user added his or her friends on Facebook. So, what do you mean?
They cut off the punchline. So
at first I thought it was illicit, and I was all ready to vote for this, but it's implicit. Then you would have got a lot of greens. But let's hear this.
So if you could think back to grade school, you remember the big thing that your teachers held over you was the concept of the permanent record. This will go on your permanent record. And I remember, being, terrified by the fear of things going on my permanent record, and it was only later that I realized that it didn't exist. Well, today your permanent record does exist. More and more people are doing activities online, and they leave these trail of digital breadcrumbs, this data exhaust that exists on the internet. And the result is this enormous amount of data on a user, this implicit data that exists in silos. Just, as you start performing your everyday activities, Netflix knows what movies I like, Apple knows what music I like, Amazon knows what books I like, Evite knows where I'm going, TiVo knows what TV shows I like, OpenTable knows where I eat, American Express knows where I spend my money, Delicious knows what I watch, what I bookmark on the internet, Google History knows every single thing I searched for. And all of this data historically now has existed in silos. Every single one of these companies controlled their own data. And there's been no easy way for me as a user or other people to benefit and access from this data. But I think the silos are now coming down. People are permissioning and privacy are now getting to the point where people are allowing these silos to be crossed. I bet virtually every single person here, when they've joined a site, has been asked to say, oh, give us your Gmail username and password, or give us your Yahoo Mail username and password. We'll import your address book. And people are doing it. In the last week, we've seen announcements from Google, Yahoo, and Facebook to open the silo on their social graph. Just today, Mozilla announced 2 new initiatives to collect data from all of their browsers to store that data. And so I guess the trend here is I think that the next big wave of internet value creation will come to the companies that are able to find novel and new ways to deliver value based on crossing these silos, based on the implicit data that exists on the internet. People are just beginning to use financial data to build the new version of Quicken. People are using social bookmarking data to improve search. People are using social networking data to improve advertising targeting. And when you think about it, Google's PageRank is really a really interesting use of implicit data that already exists elsewhere. One final example, if you read Malcolm Gladwell's book, Blink, and you didn't get in the first chapter, so you had to keep reading, he gives this example of some researchers that were studying blind dates. And they took a control group and said, you go spend 2 hours on a traditional blind date with someone and get explicit data. They will tell you about themselves. And then they took another group and said, you spend 5 or 10 minutes in this blind date's apartment without them. And you could open their fridge and see what they eat. You could open their closets and see what they wear. You could see if they're rich or poor, messy or sloppy, if they read Nietzsche or Maxim magazine. And they concluded overwhelmingly that the 5 minutes or 10 minutes of implicit data collection was far more valuable and revealing about that individual than the 2 hours of explicit data collection. And I think you're going to see the same thing on the internet as people leave these digital breadcrumbs. The conversion of this data exhaust is going to create value in new and interesting ways.
Yeah, you can always tell the first-time guys on the panel they come over-prepared. So I was articulate, though. So, is the web going to become implicit? Green or blue or all right. Now, wow, you're a rock star on your first night out. So Roger, you were kind of like getting all kind of worried and everything.
I hope he's not right.
Right.
And the reason I hope he's not right is that the privacy issues here are profound, and there is, the industry is at a very difficult place because the value is being captured by people whose power is based on controlling more cookies than anyone else. And the whole notion of cookies is inherently insecure, and if you step back and think about it, I really think that Josh's trend is competing, it's basically, can somebody do enough good before somebody does something really bad? Because if somebody does something really bad, the industry would, keep in mind, 4 people are getting 90 to 95%, according to Joe, 95% of the total advertising economics on the web. And not one of them creates any of the content on which they gain that money. And so there is the argument against cookies has a very simple thing. If you banned cookies tomorrow, you would essentially eliminate the market power of all portals, plus Google, And you would create an environment where it would be possible to step back and actually think about what should we do. Because I think the problem we have today with implicit is that there is implied consent to follow my breadcrumbs, which has not actually been conveyed by all the people in the system, right? And it is to me a disturbing thing. But by the way, I'm certain you're right.
No, I think what you're beginning to see is the privacy and permission controls. And you're seeing it in interesting ways. You have all of these microformats and other standards that are out there. But what's really catching on is Bob wants to be your friend. People understand that if Bob wants to be your friend and you say yes, Bob gets access to that data. Is it going to be a big leap to say Walmart or Amazon want to be your friend, and therefore Walmart and Amazon get that data?
Okay, but in that, again, that if that's true, then that requires that you do a reset around things like Facebook that do in fact enable that level of permission, and away from Google, away from Yahoo, right?
Or it's being done right now through shared, you sign up
somebody
to
wants to make the product.
Let Joe speak up here.
I don't think anybody on this panel is qualified to talk about that point with great deference. And let me tell you why. This is an under 25 issue. We're backers of Facebook, okay, public statement. Thanksgiving dinner, have a daughter, 25, daughter 20. Daughter 25 decided to out the daughter 20 on Facebook. What did that mean? She showed us the part of Facebook that parents shouldn't see about what my daughter 20 was doing. Mom and I didn't like that, and we talked to her. And we said, you can't do this. I mean, sometime you're going to get a job, and people are going to look at this. You know what she said? She said, Dad, you don't get it. I'm not going to work for people like you. The people I work for are all going to be on Facebook, and they'll understand. Game over. So it's a generational issue, whether we like it or not. It's about parents, about what they are willing to say and do. And I got to tell you something. It isn't what I believe, but it doesn't matter. Half the world is under 25.
And if all we were talking about was Facebook, you would be right. The problem is that the thing he is talking about is pervasive. It is fundamental to the architecture of the web as it currently exists, and it is an uncontrolled open-loop system that is global. And the notion that not just Facebook knows what I'm doing, but the Chinese government knows what I'm doing is something that bothers me, and it might bother you too. Remember, you're the right-wing guy here. You should be very concerned about this.
Scott McNeely said it right. He said,
well, he's a right-wing guy too.
Get over it. Get over it. There's nothing we can do about it.
Right.
He is right by definition.
Right. Vinod, do you have some color to this?
Yeah, I agree with Joe. There's nothing we can do about it. I disagree with Roger in saying this is a problem. I think it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity because the last 10 years have been about an explosion of data, information, stuff available to us. The next 10 or 20 years should be about a reduction of that to exactly what I want. I think privacy is a red herring that's used way too much by people who don't have anything else to do. Roger accepted. Roger is an exception. It is a theoretical concept because it's mostly a solvable problem. There are rules and laws and ways to address the privacy issue. But what I want is my trail to automatically feed into what I want to see. Today I get 500 emails. I want the 50 I want. And the rest I want taken care of without me touching them. The 100 articles people want me to see, I want them sorted to the 3 I can afford to look at every day, hopefully with high priority. So data reduction is an important need in this explosion of information, and that data reduction should be based on my behavior and what I want. You know, I have a secretary who takes care of those kinds of things for me, does the data reduction. I think every person will need it, and I think it's a critical need, and it will be a huge opportunity. And I do believe we leave a lot of our behavior around, and there's a lot of value in it, and that can be harnessed for us. And if somebody else makes money at it, great.
All righty. Green or red in our audience here? All right.
95.
Good. Wow. Josh, man, rookie of the year. Yeah, wanted to pick up on what I think the most important trend is this generational break, because they have a completely different mentality, and I haven't seen that break since the PC generation. Am I right? I mean, and I don't think you can build a successful company unless you put whatever you're doing on top of that generation, and they are completely distinct in their behavior.
Well, if I can just then throw one rebuttal here, because I did vote green because I agree with the trend. I believe it will happen. But I would simply point out sequence really matters. If 100 million credit cards get stolen before you make this work, there is going to be regulation, and the world is going to change. And the thing to understand is that we live in a time where the whole world can look at this stuff. And at the moment, it has nothing to do with Facebook. Facebook is the solution. The problem is that credit cards fly over the web constantly, and cookies give people the breadcrumbs to follow them around. And you know, anybody who thinks that this is all going to happen la-di-da without any problems, I think, you know, that's probably where the bet goes. But you have to focus on probability intensity. That is, maybe low probability of this not happening. But if it doesn't happen, it reorients the entire industry. Because if you have to do a reset on security on the web, you have to do a reset on all advertising. And that just means you have to take a
I
couple
lose
years
more
off.
credit cards sending them to the dry cleaners than I do on the web, though.
But that's you. That's because you're 60.
All right, guys. We start talking about our dry cleaner. Now move on. Okay, the mobile, Roger, you're up. The mobile device industry's migration from feature phones to smartphones will produce even greater disruption than what the PC industry experienced as it moves from character mode to graphical interfaces. It will disrupt the competitive balance with big market share shifts. Consumers will benefit from greater choice and lower prices.
So the key point I'm making, which I think is quite distinct from the one that Vinod was making earlier, is that think about this initially as a North American phenomenon, because it develops differently in Europe and it develops differently in Asia. But let's think about North America today. 97% of the phones sold in North America qualify as feature phones, which is to say they basically just make phone calls and can do texting. 3% qualify as smartphones, which means that they can do something else at least as well as they do the phone call. Maybe it's email, maybe it's whatever. A year ago, a little over a year ago, the only choices you had in the smartphone market were from BlackBerry and Palm. And the thing that, so most people thought of a smartphone, and I think smartphone's a bad term, so just that was defined as something with a keyboard and a screen that you could send email on. I think the reality of this thing is, if you think about what Vinod was saying about something that makes your life better, this is much more general than a PC. I think that what you're really doing here is you're starting to put in real software environments with an operating system that separates the hardware from the applications layer, and an applications layer that separates the network from the physical device. So suddenly, portability of everything becomes a really big deal. User-generated content becomes much easier to implement, much easier to move around. And the reason that I think this is so much more profound than the character mode to graphical interface change in PCs is that cell phones are far more pervasive and far more personal. And if you go back and you look at what happened when PCs went from character mode to graphical interfaces, it didn't just take out Lotus and WordPerfect. It took out IBM. And this transition is going to take out Motorola. It's almost certainly going to harm one of LG, Samsung, and Sony Ericsson. And I'm talking about North America here, okay? And it is going to be intensely disruptive. It's going to harm Microsoft because you cannot make, consumers are the primary buyers, and you cannot make, and I hate to say this because at Palm, we're a huge Microsoft partner, and so this is a big issue for us, but you cannot make a great consumer product with an unbundled operating system. It just can't be done. And you can't optimize power management. And so I think these are really gigantic issues. So it's going to be incredibly disruptive. And I don't know how it emerges at the back end, but I'd be willing to bet that we're going to look out 5 years and see that half of the phones, or half the things we think of as phones, do something far more profound than what we used to think of a phone doing. And I would simply point out that the design centers, because of power, because of form factor and cost, are going to fragment intensely. And this is a huge, huge both opportunity and issue. I mean, I don't know how many of you guys think of a Kindle as a smartphone, but a Kindle is a smartphone. It's got this totally transparent, absolutely brilliantly implemented 3G network behind it, and one of the most extraordinary 1.0 products ever shipped. And, you know, I don't know how successful it'll be, you know, in terms of unit volume, but it is a life changer for the people who use it. And it's going to result in turning a 1 billion unit a year industry on its head. And, you know, I assume that Nokia will do really well. I assume Apple will do really well. I assume that RIM will do really well. And I'm certain that Palm will do really well.
Yes, sir.
But other than that, all bets are off.
All right, time to vote. Panel, green or red? Ooh. Vinod's payback time. Vinod,
Well, you know, Roger sort of just, if Steve is right about my forecast, then he's really right about Roger's. It already happened. I think it's too conservative a forecast for the rate of evolution. Forecasting trends is interesting because they're non-linear. And for those of you who are interested in the art of forecasting and how to assess it, I highly recommend a book called The Black Swan. How many people have read the book? Well, good number. It is more about what to believe and what not to believe and how the world operates. I think that's too conservative a forecast. I think that's really not a forecast. So I just sort of agree with Steve that it's too conservative a forecast. It'll happen, but so what?
Well, actually, Vinod, you made the point earlier, though, about it being whether things are investable versus not investable. Right? And I would simply observe that there's hundreds of billions of dollars of market cap in this space. And I'm suggesting it's all going to move around. So, I don't know. I'm in the investment business, you're in the investment business. Obviously, we're at different phases.
Right. Maybe I should support you on that because you were assuming my reaction, and it's partially true in that I don't agree with the trend, but it's not because it's not important. I think actually it is massively important, but I'm not sure it's more important than the user interface transition that the PC had. I mean, that was a pretty monumental transition from DOS to Macintosh. And so I might also twist the part that I didn't agree with is I don't think the smartphone is the important feature. I think it's good graphical user interface. And I might say the iPhone and products like that are the trigger point, not some smartphone thing that says, oh, we put a keyboard in.
No, right? I'm sorry. I explicitly tried to divorce this. The smartphone's a terrible definition.
Right. So I may have more of a quibble on that.
Again, my definition was a phone, something where phone is an ancillary capability rather than the core. A feature phone is all about telephoning with texting as being the ancillary thing. These devices, people buy it because they're attracted to something other than the phone. Yep. And that the phone is if you will.
Then I would switch to green, because I think that I would define it as basically Apple did it again. Right. Apple and products like it, once again, are showing a good user interface, can take data services market by storm like it did in Europe, after Nokia's tried for years.
Isn't the iPhone the first example of this disruption? I mean, you know, the phone industry was so bad that you had to wait in line for blocks to get your iPhone. I mean, what does that tell you about what was happening to the other cell phone companies? So, you know, my iPhone, I spend 90% of my time on my iPhone out on the web. It's completely changed my life.
I have one question for you, though. Will these new phones let us make a voice call on El Camino Real and Palo Alto?
Not a chance. That's not the design center.
They won't do that.
No,
all right.
They won't do it on 280 near Woodside Road either. No. In fact, as far as I can understand, that if you sit there, it's part of Moore's Law. You're not allowed to make a call in either of those two places. I mean, to Vinod's point, I think it is a fair statement that this process has begun. I think that the outcome is far from certain. And, for example, I'm a huge fan of Nokia. I think, though, their situation is actually perilous in North America. Their situation in Europe, for a variety of reasons, I think is essentially untouchable. Their situation in Asia, anybody's bet. I totally agree with your model of device other than the projection thing in Asia. And that, I think, makes, in this environment, once you start to put really more compelling things, and they're already doing it, obviously, all over Asia. But if you look in North America, where our phones are just so retrograde, and this is going to be a spectacularly disruptive thing. And again, I don't believe you can say with certainty who winds up being the winners, because if you assume that these more intelligent phones become half the shipment market in 10 years, that would be 500 million units, up from less than 30 million units a year now. That is investable, okay? I don't care whether it's begun. We're at 3% penetration, okay? And so if you guys want to quit at 3%, cool, okay? I got no problem with that. That's your choice. For me, 3% is how I confirm that the thing has actually begun. And so when I invest, I like to be kind of certain that the there is there. Now that reflects the difference between the stage at which I invest versus Vinod. Vinod's in the business of making the new thing happen from nothing. And I am, we were partners for more than a decade, okay? So I'm a huge admirer of this, but I will say that for the world that we're looking at in mobile, I do believe that the best of this trend is still in front of us from an investment perspective.
All righty, we got to move on. Before I ask for your vote here, I'm supposed to particularly address our web audience by saying you can text yes or no to the phone number 650-224-0053. Now let's see what you all think. Green or red on Rogers?
Mostly green.
All right. It's good. 80%, 70?
Yeah, 75.
75? Cool. All righty. It's kind of ironic that we have to turn to the far right to get the green trend. That's a trend in itself. Water tech will replace global warming as a global priority. Okay, it has a little Republican in here. The world is running out of usable water, and this will kill millions more people in our lifetime than global warming.
So the issue I want to talk about today, and I'd even be willing to give up my second slot because this is so important. I had a not-so moment this year. I was elected to the board of the World Economic Forum, and I went to my first meeting. And the guys on the board really review and help set, I say the guys, the team. You've got Queen Rania, you've got Susan Hockfield from MIT, you've got a great group of people. They set the agenda for what happens at Davos. And the global warming debate came up. And Peter Brabeck stood up. Peter's chairman at Nestle, runs Nestle, and he talked for about 15 minutes about water. And he made that the central theme of Davos this year. Here's what happened to me. I've got to thinking, as I have a daughter now, my youngest is a couple, 3 weeks away if we make it from her turning 21. And I got pensive, and I started thinking about, as a result of what I've learned, how we might be judged by history. And thinking about Andy Grove and Only the Paranoid Survive, here's my fear. There is some real chance that they could write about us, as this is the generation that focused so much on global warming, they forgot about water. And while they were forgetting about water, a couple of 100 million people died that didn't have to before the first real casualties set in from whatever ends up happening in global warming. Let me give you some data. I didn't know this, but we all know about Darfur. We've lost about 2 million people. Complex. You know how it started? 2 tribes, farmers, herders. Big drought, no water, war over remaining water. Darfur could go down as the first water war of the 21st century. And based on projections, at 2 million deaths, it might not make the top 10 list. I may have my numbers a little wrong, but it's a big problem. 1 billion people today, out of the 6 billion that are here, don't have clean water today that let them lead a healthy life. I'll give you a couple of things. When you hear them, you just shake your head. We were really worried about HIV/AIDS in Africa, and we figured out that mothers who breastfed their babies could transmit AIDS in the mother's milk. So we convinced them to go to formula. Death rate among babies went up. Why? Great formula, local water. Local water full of parasites, infant mortality went up higher because of dirty water than the risk they were taking getting AIDS transmitted from mother's milk. I think the number is we're losing hundreds of thousands and maybe close to 1 million people a year under 5 years old because of dirty water, and particularly in the first 2 years. You say, well, wait a minute, that's not a problem for us. We're here in the US and we may not have a problem. I remember when my daughter was born in '87. That started what was a 6-year drought in California that really didn't end until about the early '90s. And then I started doing some Google work, and I figured out that was the longest drought that we've had in the last 150 years. But scientists think that in the 12th century, we had a 60-year drought in California that was worse than the one we had for 6 years. Now, what would a 60-year drought do to this state? I could sit here for more minutes than Mr. Perkins is going to give me. A couple of final facts. Within our short lifetime, meaning the next 15 years, instead of 1 billion people having a water problem, we're going to be up to 3 billion. On average, 70% of the world's water is used for agriculture. In developing countries, it's over 90%. If you knew how much the cotton that you're wearing in your clothes cost in gallons of water to produce, on your way to buy your hybrid car, you'd probably figure out something else to wear. Probably my final AlwaysOn moment was a conversation I had at Davos this year with Shimon Peres. And we were talking about peace in the Middle East. And he's a big tech guy, so he hangs out with the venture crowd there. And he was imploring us, and he was talking about Israel, and he says, you know, we have a way to solve all of the problems, but the one problem we can't solve in the Middle East that's going to keep us from having peace is water. And he says, I challenge the venture community, and I've done this in Israel, and I'm doing it here, and I want to do it tonight. It's complex. It's a much harder problem than global warming. But if nanotechnology can be made to work, and we can figure out the right answer for desalinization, we'll probably do more from this generation from a technical point of view to improve how the whole world works, and probably prevent many handfuls of wars over the next 30 years if we can just make that one technology work. What we're missing, candidly, is the Al Gore for water. We've put global warming in the center of everybody's mind, and we've ignored a bigger problem. End of message.
Well, I elect you, Joe. And on that note, greener. So, green or red? Oh, okay.
That's a split vote.
Now it seems to me, Vinod, that you've invested in a few water companies. So how come you're doing a half?
Clearly, water is a very important problem. And so in terms of investable opportunities, I agree with Joe 100%, hence the split vote. The other side of the equation was his statement that this is more important a problem than global warming, and that's the piece I disagree with. Only because if we have, we often talk about glaciers in Alaska, they're relatively unimportant compared to the glaciers in the Himalayas, which feed water to 2 billion people right from those glaciers. So global warming may in fact be an important tool in reducing the water impact for a population which will have the fastest rising rate of water consumption and energy consumption for the next 25, 30 years.
But China is talking about using 1 year of global supply of concrete to build an aqueduct that goes from the Himalayas to Beijing because they're going to run out of water in that part of China.
Right, because they haven't caught up with the fact that the glaciers may not be there in 20 years. By the time the project's done, the aqueduct will be dry.
All right.
No, seriously, it's global warming is causal, and that's why I split my vote. Other than that, I do agree water is a major and very important opportunity, and I suspect water in 25, 30 years will be a rarer commodity than oil and more valuable, and hence the split vote.
Okay, we should move along here.
Okay, can I say one thing on that one, though?
Okay.
I think his
Say it
crisis
really
is
fast,
immediate.
Steve.
This is long-term, and I think this is a call to entrepreneurs, because I would say the biggest gap between a market need and a lack of technology innovation occurs in this sector more than any that we've ever seen, right? We need clean water solutions, so it's a siren call to all entrepreneurs everywhere.
Yeah, and we have 2 investments in water, and we are looking for more because of the criticality of the problem.
Are they American companies by any chance?
Pardon me?
The 2 ones that you've invested in, are they American companies?
They are American companies, not Bay Area, but both American.
Yeah, that's cool.
I got one more point. T. Boone Pickens is selling his oil stocks and buying up local water companies. Now, there's a message here.
Yeehaw!
All righty.
What do you think it is?
Good one. Oh, I got to ask our audience, green or red?
He actually did. He's divested almost all his portfolio.
And he's 97. Wow.
So that's about 97%. The rest of you can leave. No, I'm just kidding. All right. Yep. Steve's second one, and this one's giving me flashbacks when I had dyslexia. Evolution trumps design. Many interesting unsolved problems in computer science, nanotechnology, and synthetic biology require the construction of complex systems. Evolutionary algorithms are a powerful alternative to traditional design, blossoming first in neural networks, now in microbial reengineering, and eventually in artificial intelligence. Now, what the hell does that mean? I agree. No.
Okay, so I'm a geek. I'm sorry. I mean, it's the thing that excites me a lot. It's a weird pattern that seems to stripe across a variety of disparate areas of technology. So this is obviously a very different kind of trend from the demographic market trend before. This is a pure geek tech trend, and it's also a combination of near-term, obvious stuff like neural networks, has already happened. Microbial stuff I'll focus on because that's the current activity that's pretty exciting in terms of what artificial evolution could do. In the long term, the big, hairy, unsolved problems like, how do you make operating systems not crash? How can you make artificial intelligence that exceeds that of a human? These kind of problems that may seem impossible to tackle may be solvable using evolutionary algorithms. So I'll explain what that means in a moment. And that's why I think the trend is important, even though I'll dive deep a little bit into microbial stuff because it's the here and now. I think the trend transcends that. So what are we talking about? What in the world is this thing? So evolution, we all know biological evolution. We're trained about that: variation, selection, differential selection. You get evolution. In fact, some, like Daniel Dennett, will tell you that you will always get evolution if you have the simple ingredients of variation, selection, rinse, and repeat in every context. So you can instantiate this in a computer program that just trains computer programs and breeds them and cross-pollinates them and selects the one that does some task well, brute force over generations. That's an approach to artificial evolution programs. So the forecast, the trend, the near-term trend that I guess we'll ask for a vote on, because there'll be a mishmash of stuff in here, is that in the near term, the next year or two, the important components of the most successful and the most robust microbial reengineering projects will involve some form of evolution in their making. They won't just purely be designed. They won't be biotech where you splice a gene because you suspect it works, stick it in an organism, have it do something useful, and have complete control over the process. It'll be a hybrid where you design for evolution. You design something, then evolve it further to make it more successful. So I step back a bit. Where has this been successful? It has been used, as I mentioned, neural networks. If you have speech recognition, almost all those are run by neural networks that are not programmed by people that figured out how to recognize speech. When a computer wants to recognize either vision systems or acoustic signals, it uses a neural network, much like our brain, that's trained through an iterative algorithm. Currently, in the microbial work, I'll get to that more, people are doing directed evolution and adaptive evolution where what they literally do is cripple a microbe so that all of its redundant metabolic pathways are removed. And there's only one way that it can live, one way it can process a food, a feedstock, to produce the sugars and energy it needs. And all other redundant pathways are removed. And the reason you do this is not because you don't need those other pathways. In fact, you've crippled the organism. It's because the organism will then evolve to do the one thing it can do to survive better and better and better, and that one thing you left makes some chemical of interest as a byproduct. So this feeds into a whole raft of companies that Vinod and I have invested in our firm GFJ that are doing this as we speak to make chemicals of interest, industrial chemicals, biofuels, everything from jet fuel to diesel substitutes and what have you, and a lot of things in the petrochemical industry that aren't as well known in pure industrial chemicals. Great. So the future of this, let me just say what's produced so far. So far in terms of published work, people doing design using their brain have been able to improve the microbe's ability to make chemicals about 4x in some easy cases. Just put the genes in, it does what you want, about a 4x improvement. The company, same company, in this case Genomatica, that then evolved that organism with the method I described, found a 20x improvement in the chemical of interest. So the organism that reproduces the fastest, by definition, makes the chemical you want the most. And all you do is reproduce, they reproduce like bunnies on steroids. Every 20 minutes, you're pulling off a new generation that's the fastest growing and so on. And by the end, you have a solution that's better than any human's designed, and no one knows how it works. And that's how evolution tends to go. This has been applied in analog circuit design. There's a little company, not even venture-backed, that's got 23 patents, all done by computers, running little algorithms to do analog circuit design, antenna design. And they claim that they have machines routinely beating human intelligence, better than any human on the planet in those two domains. And that's just the beginning. What I hope to excite you about is a trend that's playing out today in microbes, in the past in pattern recognition, in the future in what we would think of as AI or human intelligence.
Great.
And I think it's important.
All right, green or red? You don't know. It's the only time I've been pleased that Steve talks so fast.
This is a matter of trust. I'm going with Steve. That sounded really good.
Wait, can I get, this is the most unusual voting pattern ever. I got to hold it there.
Look at how happy they are. They're just like this.
I want to start off. Vinod said to me at dinner tonight, if I could be personal, that he wished he were smart enough to be a theoretical physicist. Now, I know Vinod, and he's much smarter than that. That made me think, I wish I was smart enough to understand what the hell Steve was talking about.
Okay, Noah, let's recast this vote. How many of you understood what he was talking about? Nobody, only Vinod. And the only guy that knew gave him a half paddle. Why half?
So I agree with Steve, and as Steve mentioned, we're using evolutionary design in quite a few startups. And it's a major new tool. In that sense, it's very important. But I would venture to guess it's one of half a dozen important tools that we can use to do the systems of the next 3 to 5 years, the microbial tools he was talking about. We have organisms through evolutionary design that are producing diesel or gasoline directly instead of alcohol that you have on your table. Very exciting area to do improvement. But synthetic biology, which is a different approach, is just as important. Combinatorial design is just as important. I'll give you another example, mimicking nature. If you take a shower in the morning and you drain your bathtub, it forms a vortex. It forms a vortex because the most energy efficient shape there is for draining a bathtub. It's the least energy used. There's companies doing computational fluid dynamics on that model and saying, how can we improve the efficiency because pumps and compressors and air conditioners aren't built that way by humans. So it's one of 6 important new categories that nobody who got engineering before 2000 learned about. And so I think it's important, but I don't think it's the most important thing in terms of new design capabilities for all kinds of new stuff. And that's why my split vote.
Great. All right, we're going to throw it out to the audience, but there's a condition. You can only vote if you know what's going on up here. So green and red. Hey.
Wow.
Only in Silicon Valley would we have such a high penetration. We have about 50% there. Okay, on to Vinod's second one. Fossilizing fossil energy. Oil will have increasing difficulty competing with biofuels made from cheap non-food crops for transportation. Coal will become less competitive compared to reliable solar, thermal, and enhanced geothermal electricity, as both oil and coal's decline will be aided by higher efficiency engine, cars, lighting, and appliances.
So, you know,
Go ahead.
yeah, come on.
They're just happy they could understand that.
I tell a wonderful story which is very, very important. In 1980, AT&T asked McKinsey to do a forecast for cell phones. McKinsey's forecast for the year 2000 was less than 1 million cell phones in the market by the year 2000. And the reason was simple. They based their phone forecast on the phone of 1980. If you remember a phone, it mounted on the bottom of your car with a big sewing machine, had a handset cord. Yes, cell phones did have handset cords. If you put a year 2000 cell phone next to that phone, it's far smaller than the handset cord of the cell phone on which McKinsey made that forecast. That problem appears again and again and again in today's energy forecast. 99% of the discussion I see on this topic is completely irrelevant to the topic. The fact is, if you do fundamental economic analysis and technology analysis, in the next 3 years, we will have at least 4 or 5 and maybe as much as a dozen proof points that production costs of $1 a gallon of biofuel is very achievable. That would sell at retail at well below $2 a gallon, even with today's tax structure and no subsidy. That's one area of fossil fuels, fossilizing oil. I can't imagine why oil would stay in business if there's an alternative that's that cheap. And oh, by the way, those of you interested in the land use argument, at least my calculations say there will be 0 land needed to replace 100% of our gasoline. 0 land, maybe negative land. For a detailed analysis, you just got to go to my website. Tony won't give me enough time to explain this. The other major issue is electric power generation, which is coal and natural gas. We just signed last year and announced a 20-year power purchase agreement for a 175 megawatt solar thermal plant in California that, by the way, is cheaper than natural gas, the next best fossil fuel alternative in California. Now, over time, as these technologies get established, and if you went to PG&E and said, would you rather have natural gas today or solar thermal with storage, if you didn't have to be green, they would pick solar thermal because it's much less subject. 1, it's cheaper. 2, it's much less subject to commodity price variations. So we can fossilize fossil fuels. In fact, that's where they belong.
All right, green or red? Ooh. Uncle Joe, you look like you want to leave. All right.
They're voting out there.
Anybody want to add any color to our, obviously,
I could add one thing.
ingenious trend?
The question that needs to be asked, and you and I haven't talked about it because we learned this with the food crops. It takes 1 gallon of water to get a gallon of oil out of the ground, and it takes 8 gallons of water to make 1 gallon of biodiesel using, corn ethanol. What's the water content for what you're talking about?
So the nascent technologies, and I'll get just slightly technical, the thermochemical nascent conversion technologies, which will be the first technologies to come to market, use less than half the water used in gasoline refining.
Wow.
Including extraction?
Including extraction.
That's good.
Okay.
Now, I want to give a word of caution. Having said what I did, we can, in fact, do it right or wrong. If you tear up rainforests to plant this stuff, you will get the wrong answer. If you use corn-like crops and feed them water like you feed water to corn, you'll get the wrong answer. But there are dozens of options that require very little water, very little land. In fact, for those of you interested, I've been pushing the idea, how many people know of the LEEDs rating for homes? Green homes have a LEEDs rating. I proposed what I call a CLAW rating, the carbon impact, the land impact, the air impact, and the water impact of any biofuel. So it will be relatively easy to assess a CLAW rating, just like a LEEDs rating for homes. And I think it's imperative we do that right away.
Okay. Steve, real quick. You have
I just want to, for full disclosure, I was reminded of an interesting quote. And full disclosure, as you know, Khosla Ventures, DFJ, are the most active venture firms in this area. So we're heavily invested in big green paddle for that. And so because we might be biased, I was reminded of a quote that some of you may have heard, but may not have heard the whole version of it. It's from Sheikh Yamani, the former Saudi oil minister, in 2000. He said, "The Stone Age came to an end not for lack of stones, and the oil age will end, but not for lack of oil." But he goes on, "Technology is the real enemy for OPEC. The real victims will be countries like Saudi Arabia. The oil will stay on the ground forever."
That's very interesting.
By the way, I think it was in 1960s that one of the Saudi Arabians first said that. And in fact, technology is their enemy. Technology is our tool.
Okay.
And let's have a cheer for that.
All right. Green or red out there? Are we going to give? All right. Anybody got a red there? I know Ed Ring might have an Ed.
98.6.
All right. Excellent. Okay. Now we're going to throttle down the intellectual level here. And go several. And Josh. Venture Capital 2.0. Venture capital has underwritten most of the transformative software and internet companies for the last 20 years. However, changing economics for both startups and venture funds, combined with changing markets, will have a dramatic impact on the venture capital industry. And obviously...
So I was told to be controversial when I came here, so I couldn't think of anything more controversial than attacking the industry of my panelists. And in researching my trends, Tony, I noticed that last year you predicted the Web 2.0 shakeout.
Yes.
And it was a sea of red. But I think there will be a shakeout. I just think it's going to be the venture shakeout. And what I want to first mention that I'm talking about mainly IT and software industries. I'm not talking about a variety of other industries. We know that there's changing economics for software companies in terms of the lowering the cost of barrier to entry. We're also seeing changing economics in the exit landscape. The IPO market's stagnant. You're seeing 75% of M&A occurring at valuations of 150 million or less. But for a quantitative industry, we do very little math. So I want to just do a little bit of math on a venture fund. I want to take a typical $400 million fund. In order to get a 20% return on that $400 million fund over 6 years, you need to triple that. Add in the carry and the fees, that you basically have to return about $1.5 billion to generate a 20% return on that $400 million fund. Now that fund might own, say, 20% of a company on exit. So that means in order to generate that $1.5 billion of profit for your investors, you now have to generate $7.5 billion worth of economic value. And so when I sit down and say, well, let's look at that, and you say, well, if that fund was in MySpace, Skype, and YouTube, they'd be halfway there to their target in the same fund. If you do 25 deals in that fund, that would mean that all those deals would have to average an exit of $300 million. It's kind of like the Lake Wobegon of portfolios here. And so the reason I bring this math up is because I'm not the only one to see it, but I think that we're now hitting the point where the limited partners and the investors see it, and that has some real impact on entrepreneurs and technology. It has some real impact on an industry. We're seeing larger fund size. Venture funds have doubled in size in the last 10 years. We're seeing a shrinking in venture funds, 49% drop in the last 6 years, but still more money going into this space. And that's creating some real interesting pressures. These cap tables are being created by the VC ecosystem, and yet the exit realities aren't matching that. So what happens? And that's the big question. And I think you're going to see some real changes in terms of, as the institutional LP community recognizes that there's a shift in these returns. 10 years, the median venture return has been negative. You have a whole generation of venture capitalists that have not earned a carry check, and limiteds that are not making money. And that's shifting the investment landscape. I think it's going to change the amount of investable capital in software and IT. You're seeing it, present companies, you know, you're seeing it as people, as venture firms realize this. You know, so I also wonder a little bit how much of the expansion into things like nanotech, clean tech, and international investing is driven by people running to something or people running from something.
So are you saying all the folks that work on Sandhill Road will have to go out and get a real job?
Well, but I also think it has a real impact for the entrepreneurs as well.
Then it'll become always off.
Always off, yes, sir. Never. So
So
Vinod, you get, what, 110% return when you're on vacation. What do you say to Josh here?
Well, you know, if you're talking about software and IT, I would tend to agree with Josh. If you're talking about innovation in general, I would disagree with Josh.
Okay.
So it's about, in fact, any industry by nature over time becomes mature, and you have to look for new areas where innovation plays a role. Having said that, even in old industries, there is a lot of room for innovation.
Okay, I forgot to have you guys vote. Let's vote. Green or red? Red, red, green, red. Okay, now we're humbling the guy a little bit here. Okay, Roger, green.
Yeah, I'm going to defend the thesis in the sense that I believe that that the issue for software and IT is very real, but I don't think it has anything to do with venture. Just as a historical thing, we don't do history anymore, but this very theme came up a few years ago, articulated the same way, and I'm now convinced that it isn't true because the investors have concluded that venture is an asset class and they're going to leave money there even if they underperform T-bills for 30 years in a row. And you know, I just think we have to accept that as a notion. So I think you're okay job-wise. The place where I really do agree with you is that I think that the opportunities, you know, IT is an enterprise thing. And in the United States, we've been, you know, the world that Jack Welch created, we have been harvesting our economy for 30 years. And until we get back onto a theme of rebuilding the country and its infrastructure, you know, we're just not going to make the kind of investments that would allow IT and software to be interesting businesses. And so, you know, my sense is that most of the really compelling stuff that's happening on the web is happening with venture guys coming in after the really profound work has been done. And so as a consequence, you know, I think the venture industry is playing a lesser and lesser role in the categories it used to play really, really big in. And to Vinod's point, and this is where I completely agree with Vinod, I think the industry's made a really, really intelligent diversification away from a category that is exceptionally mature. So, I mean, I share Vinod's view entirely that the rate of innovation today, if anything, is higher than any time in my lifetime. It's just a lot of it's happening, you know, in categories we used to think of as being foreign to our community. But having now conquered the media industry, right, Silicon Valley went from having no presence in consumer to basically dominating, having the most important companies in almost every category. You know, I think it's quite reasonable to be looking at things like energy and nano and all those other things.
Who would have thought that advertising revenue was going to be one of our primary sources of revenue in Silicon Valley?
Yeah.
Okay, Joe, you look really pissed off, so.
Yeah. Well, I was in violent agreement with what you said in your first point, so I'm going to be equally violent against you this time. And I'm saying it this way, I'm not sure you could be more wrong. And here's why. 25 years ago, when we started Accel, and I think KP was around, and Sequoia was around, and probably Mayfield and 2 or 3 other firms, there were $2 billion in venture raised. And now the numbers have gotten obscene. Here's what hasn't changed. About 90% of all of the returns in venture have been made by about 5% of the people. And that hasn't changed. What has changed is the global supply of capital, and that keeps pouring in. But what doesn't change is where the returns come from, and it's a very, 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 very small set. And for some reason, limiteds ignore that, as you said, and they keep doing it.
Yeah.
Now, here's what's really changed.
They had their chance to get it right in 2001,
There's
2002.
always somebody else. You know, nobody ever got in trouble trying to put money into venture when they've got these billion. I had a chance to go have dinner with a guy in China who runs the China National Sovereign Fund, and he has $200 billion to invest. You know, and he just put $5 billion in a bank and another $5 billion in a bank. And I said, well, we just raised a $300 million fund, and if I gave you a $10 million allocation, that's not worth the 2 hours you'd spend at dinner with me. So, you know, it doesn't work. But here's the real positive message. When Silicon Valley got started in venture, and Tom Perkins and the guys who get founders credit, we had kind of like one industry going. We were doing a mini computer, and then maybe we were doing a semiconductor. I've never seen more innovation. We are going to have a renaissance in software. The whole thing we've written for the last 40 years is going to get thrown out, and as we go to SaaS, there are going to be some new billion-dollar companies created. We've got clean tech. We've got gene tech. We've got safe tech. I hope we've got water tech. There is more opportunity for great kinds of business plans to create, and about what happens here is about every decade we come and we go through another phase and we end up with a new Fortune 500 company that wasn't there at the beginning of the decade. I think the decade that's coming up from 2010 to 2020 will create more of those than cumulatively we had in the last 40 years.
All right, let's throw it out to our audience, green or red? It's kind of an interesting one. All right, Josh, how does it feel?
Feels like 40%, maybe.
Good. It's about 40% on your side. That's not too good. All right. Roger just wants to keep talking about that cell phone. Within 5 years, everything that matters to you will be available on a device. That fits on your belt, along with the other 6 that Roger has, or in your purse, which Roger only has on weekends. This will cause a massive shift in internet traffic from PCs to smaller devices.
So the thought process here is that I'm actually explicitly not talking about cell phones. I'm really saying devices. And let's focus on North America for a moment. The biggest problem we all have is no one has enough time. And the internet is currently constructed is an extension philosophically of what the PC industry was. PC industry converted everyone into a clerk by making you do your own word processing and your own, I mean, everybody became a typist again, which wasn't true 30 years ago. And the web, whenever you want something, forces you to go and look for it explicitly. And none of us has enough time. When Google was brand new, it was a tremendous time saver. Now 9 million results in 9/10 of a second is not a helpful outcome. We need filters, we need things that save us a lot of time. And one of the core things is you know, this notion of always being available. You know, in a sense, a level of presence that exists on your body. And in my mind, one of the things that's beautiful about this is that we're talking about essentially an infinite number of design centers here because, again, the power and form factor constraints do not allow you to put all the things we would want into one device. In fact, it doesn't even allow you to put all the things you want into 3 devices. So the result is people are going to be able to make lots and lots of choices because the psychographics of these things are fascinating. You can take people in the same office with the same job and the same education, and they will make fundamentally different choices about the mobile device that they would like, but the core thing, because they actually, right now there's so many individual features that stick up from one product to the next that you can now really finely slice what you want, and that's going to happen much more so as this next generation of operating systems, things like the iPhone, become much more pervasive. And I just believe that if you should all get a Kindle and study this thing, because things like that are going to be all over. And imagine if you reverse the model there, so it uploads automatically. Okay, and you know I believe that we live in a world where, you know, I think that Apple's actually got it long run wrong, because I don't think produced content, movies and pre-recorded music, is most of what you're going to do on these small devices. I actually think creating content is the vast majority of what people are going to do. In fact, that's what the evidence is already. And so that these things, people will have different design centers because they do different things. And this is back to Joe's, Facebook generation. And I just believe that within 5 years, your life is going to be made materially better because the algorithm that Palm and RIM did with email on devices, where you got the email done between when the plane landed and your hotel. Therefore, you got 45 minutes more sleep at night because you weren't doing email in your room. That is worth $50 billion to RIM and probably $70 billion to Apple, that essential notion. And I believe that you will see that all over the economy, and it will come from a lot of people that we don't even know and don't even expect today.
All right, green or red? Red. Red.
Cool.
Wow. Okay, Vinod.
Well, I have the same objection to it, which I had, that it's something that's sort of already happened, and so it's happening, it'll continue to happen, and I would agree with Roger if he said it'll go from 3% to 80%, but to me, it's not a new trend.
One quick.
Steve.
I agreed with that it's goodness, and the part of the trend I quibble with is the prediction of the magnitude of the effect. Their second line, which I'm not sure if is what you meant to defend, is that there would be a shift in net internet traffic.
I believe that you will see, I forgot to mention that line, I believe that you'll see within 10 years that more internet traffic is coming off of devices that are on your person than than the sum of everywhere else put together.
Great.
And
that was the laser focus that I violently disagree with.
That is the essence of the thing. That as sorry.
So the
when it's on your body, it's much more important.
The problem is the amount of traffic, and I agree that will go up exactly like you predict, but there's going to be even greater growth in fixed line internet or stationary internet that dwarfs, and that's going to be HDTV over IP. And Cisco and 10 different market researchers estimate that 60 to 80% of all internet traffic will be that. You're at home on a big screen TV watching movies.
If I make the statement, then number of transactions.
Yeah, oh yeah, then you've got it.
Okay, if I do it on number of transactions, then we can be comfortable.
It won't be things on
because I don't think in 5 years we'll be able to have the HDV over IP.
Even regular TV over the internet's going to swamp.
I'm not disputing that. I'm just a question of timing.
Actually, it won't be things on your person. It'll be cameras. We're headed to a world where there'll be more fixed cameras on the internet that have IP addresses than any number of phones people carry. I'm building a project, a house, and I'm putting in a security system, and it doesn't cost a lot of money to put 10 cameras in.
Why did you go green? If that's true, then why did you go green?
No,
because I still agree with you.
You like me.
I like you.
You thought all the other
liked
guys.
you.
Okay, got it.
You needed one green. That's
I
why.
did.
All right.
I was.
We're going to let somebody else in the conversation. Vinod.
But you're right.
I was just going to pick up on one little thing Steve said. Cisco and the experts say 80% will be XYZ. The Black Swan book I mentioned is all about why not to trust experts. I didn't give you the numbers. AT&T, McKinsey predicted less than 1 million phones. There were 109 million phones 20 years later. And AT&T, in fact, divested the cellular business back then because of this forecast. It is important not to trust the experts. They are generally extrapolations of the past. That's what economists and econometrics is all about. The best way to look at the future is the way Alan Kay suggested, that the best way to predict the future is to invent it. And I truly believe that is, in fact, what will determine the future. Almost anything we can put our mind to, we can invent. And in fact, if it's valuable enough and presented the right way with enough caveats, will in fact become the future.
So Vinod, let me pick up on that point and ask you whether you agree or disagree with the following statement. It is my belief that the things that we currently view as mobile devices are about 1% of the feature set I expect within 10 years. And therefore, when I make this comment about this thing, I'm talking about something that radically alters life, the way that BlackBerry and Trios did by giving you that 45 minutes back. I mean, that 45 minutes, for those of us who travel a lot, that is a huge fucking, pardon my French, huge fucking deal.
Sorry.
Okay? And
we're family. Go ahead.
Yeah. And so...
No, I do agree that this device will be transformative of our lifestyles beyond being a device you do phone communications over.
Well, and I'm suggesting that people are remarkably nearsighted when they're thinking about the evolution of phones. To me, the astonishing thing was how shocked people were by the iPhone. and how shocked everybody was by the Kindle. You know, because nobody really thought about, I mean, it's hard to believe that people didn't really think about how useful it would be to have WYSIWYG web on a small device. And nobody really thought about how useful it would be to have a wireless system that you didn't have to subscribe to use. And I'm saying, imagine all the other stuff you're not thinking about, okay? It's all coming. I mean, and the most interesting thing is once your expectations start rising, they rise a lot more rapidly than Moore's Law. I mean, Moore's Law goes like this, right? And all these components are going like this. But you look at that iPhone, right? And you know, you say to yourself, well, geez, what if it had, you know, like, what if it actually really worked? What would I want then?
Hey, speaking of which, do you guys think that Kleiner Perkins, when they raised the fund, the iPhone app fund, give me a green or red if you think that's a good idea?
I love it. I mean, look,
this is a fund, it's a $100 million fund
Maybe
where they're
market.
investing 100% of the money into iPhone application companies. Is that right?
I love that. I love that.
Okay, you like it? So you're predicting that Vinod's conflicted. Is that why you're not voting? So you're saying that the iPhone in and of itself will become a major new platform?
No. They said iPhone for marketing reasons to get it covered. It has nothing to do with the iPhone. It has to do with an architecture.
Oh,
think of, the right way to think about
So you know
this,
something that we don't know.
No, I just look at
marketing.
No, it's about computer architectures.
Right.
It won't work on anything where you have to write to the hardware, but it will work. All the things they do will work on anybody who has got a modern mobile architecture. Which at the moment there's only one, but eventually there'll be more than one.
Okay, so want to throw Roger's trend out to the crowd? Green or blue?
Blue.
Or green or
red, green.
Shame
Guys
on
over
me.
here just don't vote.
I'm a
with
red
the same
state guy, and I
intensity.
said blue.
Very low.
No.
It was an anemic 38%.
Okay, anemic 30%.
No, it's actually more. That was a red. It's probably
Okay, you guys are loving the mobiles. Final trend of this evening, Uncle Joe says that 80% of the world population will carry mobile internet devices within 5 to 10 years. Mobile internet devices are rapidly becoming the leading product category.
So a quick question, we'll make this fast. How many of you store pictures on your computer? So, suggestion, go home this weekend and take a picture of your landline phone. Figure out how to capture sound. Pick up the phone and capture the dial tone. And then push each of the buttons from 0 to 9 and capture those sounds so that in about 10 years when you have a grandchildren and they say, what was dial tone? You'll be able to go to the computer and show them because it's gone. It's gone. In a year, we come back here next year, most of us are going to start to have put cell towers in our houses. They're called femtocells. They sell for about $200. You just bring one in, you plug it into your internet, and you now have a cell tower that works in your house. I just had the opportunity to have dinner with the guy who runs China's largest mobile company. He has 500 million customers, 500 million billable lines. It took us 10 years to get the first billion customers. It took us 1,400 days to get the second billion mobile customers. Looks like we'll cross 3 billion in the next 600 days, and we're going to be at 5 billion sometime between 5 and 10 years from now, meaning if you're over 5 or 6 years old, you are going to have a mobile device. And as a final comment, when I was at HP in 1978, the true truth is, the guy who was running the cellular project for HP for Bell Labs, came and saw us, and he made us sign a non-disclosure because he needed 900 megahertz SIGGENs to do the test. And we signed this thing, and he came in and he showed us the first cell tower. And he said, you know, we only have 1,000 mobile phones in New York. And he says, with this new technology, we actually are predicting that we're going to have 10,000 customers in New York that have a mobile phone. And that was their vision of the market.
Right.
Okay.
He was right.
All right.
Good night. That's
okay,
it.
green or red here from our panelists. 80% is a high penetration rate. Oh, good. Well, Steve, you're the naysayer.
Yeah, 80%, unfortunately. With the sensitivity shown in the water trend, I'm surprised you'd say 80%, because then this becomes a referendum on global poverty. 60, 70%, I think would have been a brilliant forecast. 80s, I think going to be absurd when a quarter of the world's population has no electricity today, hard to recharge, and about half of the world's population lives on less than $2 a day, which makes it hard to get a data plan. So while there will be a proliferation of devices, there are going to be a lot of phones out there, right? So you have 6 billion phones sold, right? Over 100% penetration, but they're going to concentrate, as they do today, in the richest nations. It's just a small point, but I think an important one to keep in mind.
Although I'm going to do a slight rejoinder on this because I interpret it as access to, right? And you know, in the sense that, you know, you've got the African village phenomenon, right? Of the people who are starting businesses where they own the village phone.
Maybe it's the belt thing. He said we'll carry one, so maybe I'm quibbling over that detail. I don't think we'll have
so
a phone per person.
I'm putting some device division multiplexing into this, okay?
Okay, Joe, you want to respond or?
Yeah, I went to one of our board meetings. I get at my advanced age, I get to pick the boards I go to, and I have ones that are fun. And I went to one that has cellular backhaul technology in Cambridge, and I was looking at their customer list, and 8 of the top 10 customers were Rwanda Telephone. And I said to the guy, why aren't we selling to the big companies? And he says, because this is where the money is. And Africa just ran a big fiber cable from Cape Town all the way up the east coast of Africa. And all the countries now are building out to that. In Europe, it costs $35 or $40 a month to service a cell customer. In China and some of the new African networks, they can make money at under $5 a month. So the whole economic poverty model changes because the farmer who has one of these $5 cell phones might double the amount of money he gets for his maize crop because he's not getting screwed by the local guy who was ripping them off, so they pay for themselves. Great. So it is a money issue.
Okay, let's throw it out to the audience here. Green or red? Okay. Stevie, what do you think?
Yeah, the green here, I would have to say that's like about 47%.
47%. Okay, with that final vote, I want to thank you all for coming tonight. I want to thank our panelists, and thanks to Churchill Club.
Great job. It was a great evening. I enjoyed it again. Welcome.